you ever felt stuck, not just in life, but in something deeper, like your very soul was trapped? Carl Jung, the Swiss psychoanalyst who peered into the deepest layers of human consciousness, believed that our soul, our inner essence, often gets caught in places it was never meant to dwell, not physical places, but psychological prisons, distorted realities that bind us, not with chains, but with illusions, fears, and unresolved wounds. This video isn't about religious dogma or spiritual fluff. It's a psychological journey, a map of the human soul, and more importantly, it's a warning, a look into the 7 places where the soul must never linger, if we are to truly live. The first trap is the echo chamber of certainty. It feels safe to be certain. We cling to beliefs, political ideologies, identities, even spiritual convictions, as if they are life rafts. But Jung warned the more rigid our worldview, the more the unconscious rebels. Certainty kills curiosity. It sterilizes the soul. When we refuse to question, to doubt, or to explore opposing perspectives, we begin to mistake the map for the territory. Jung saw individuation, the process of becoming whole, not as a march toward absolute truth, but a dance with mystery. The soul must flow, evolve, contradict itself. When we dwell in certainty, we stagnate. We become caricatures of ourselves, hollowed by our own dogma. Next is the domain of unacknowledged darkness, what Jung called the shadow. The shadow is everything you deny in yourself. Your anger, your envy, your selfishness, your hidden desires. It's not evil, it's human, but when we refuse to face it, we project it onto others. We judge, we condemn, we externalize the very darkness we carry within. To dwell in the shadow's playground unconsciously is to live in blame, resentment, and victimhood. Jung didn't ask us to destroy the shadow, he asked us to integrate it. Only then does the soul find balance. Only then does darkness become power, not poison. The third trap is identity, more specifically, false identity. From birth, we inherit names, roles, nationalities, religions. We are told who we are before we even ask. We adopt personas to survive: the good girl, the achiever, the rebel, the martyr. Jung called this the persona, a mask we wear to meet the world. But what happens when we forget it's a mask? We begin to live for applause, for approval, for aesthetic. We decorate our cages and call it authenticity. Jung believed the soul cannot breathe under masks. It needs silence, solitude, and inner revolt to remember who it really is, beneath the social conditioning, beneath the mask. Then comes nostalgia, not as fond remembrance, but as psychological entrapment. There is danger in romanticizing the past. We relive old memories, revisit old heartbreaks, cling to identities we've outgrown. The soul, Jung said, is dynamic. It longs for transformation, not repetition. When we dwell in nostalgia, we become ghosts in our own lives. We stop participating in the present because we're haunted by what once was, or what never was. The soul must mourn the past, but it must also leave it. The river of life does not flow backward. This trap is subtle, but insidious. The addiction to external validation. Jung saw this as a major obstacle in modern life. We measure worth through likes, titles, beauty, wealth, but the soul doesn't speak the language of metrics. It speaks in symbols, dreams, synchronicities. When we live to be seen, we vanish. Validation is not evil, but dependency on it is corrosive. The soul must learn to affirm itself, to create, love, and exist without needing a mirror, without applause. Otherwise we become puppets, pretty smiling puppets, hollowed by performance. Guilt can be a compass, but it can also be a prison. Some guilt is healthy, it awakens conscience, but when guilt becomes chronic, when we punish ourselves endlessly for past choices, it morphs into self-hatred. Jung saw this as a distortion of the inner judge, what he called the superego, which can become tyrannical if unchecked. When the soul dwells in guilt, it stops growing, it hides, it mutilates its own worth. Jung urged us to face guilt, not with shame, but with responsibility, to learn, to integrate, and then most importantly, to move on. Your soul is not here to suffer forever, it is here to transform. The final trap is perhaps the most terrifying, the desert of meaninglessness. Modernity, Jung believed, suffers from a spiritual drought. Technology, consumerism, and materialism offer distraction, but not depth. We know how to live, but we don't know why. When the soul dwells in this desert, it dries out, depression sets in, apathy follows. We mistake numbness for peace. Jung didn't promise easy answers, but he insisted on this: meaning must be created, not found, created. Through art, through suffering, through love, through introspection, through a personal relationship with the unconscious. To leave the desert, the soul must build an oasis from within. So where should the soul dwell? In movement, in paradox, in reflection, in the terrifying, beautiful chaos of becoming. These 7 traps, the echo chamber of certainty, the shadow's playground, the mirror of false identity, the loop of nostalgia, the hunger for validation, the labyrinth of guilt, and the desert of meaninglessness, are part of every human journey, but they are not your home. Jung didn't give us a map to avoid suffering. He gave us tools to suffer consciously, to transform that suffering into wisdom, and that wisdom into freedom. Don't settle in the traps. Pass through them, learn from them, and let your soul return to where it belongs, free, whole, and awake. Let's go deeper. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But this isn't a poetic metaphor. It's a psychological call to arms, because what stands between you and that true self is everything false that you've learned to believe. Let's revisit the traps, not as mere dangers, but as stages. Each trap holds a gift. Each wound carries a lesson. And Jung's greatest insight was this: we do not heal by avoiding the darkness. We heal by descending into it with awareness. Certainty, for example, teaches us the comfort of structure, but it also teaches us that truth, when clung to too tightly, becomes a lie. Only when we loosen our grip on certainty can we enter dialogue with others, with ourselves, with the unknown. This is the beginning of wisdom. The shadow terrifies us, because it shows us the parts of ourselves we'd rather never admit. But these dark corners carry energy. Repressed desires often contain the seed of passion. Anger, when integrated, becomes strength. Jealousy can illuminate what we long for. The shadow, Jung said, is 90% pure gold, if we're brave enough to mine it. The false identity that mask you wear in society may help you survive, but it can never help you thrive. And yet it's not enough to tear it off, because behind the mask there's often nothing, just fragments. That's where the real work begins. Individuation, Jung taught, is the piecing together of those fragments into something real, not perfect, but real. Nostalgia feels warm, safe, but sometimes it's a spell. We romanticize the past because we fear the future, because we haven't yet grieved what we lost or what we never had. But grief is not the enemy. Unprocessed grief is. Jung would have said, don't go back, go deep. Validation. Oh, how tempting it is to be seen, to be praised, to be loved by the crowd. But when we seek validation too often, we hand the world the remote control to our soul. Every like, every comment becomes a vote on our worth. Jung knew this trap well. He warned us that our real value is discovered not in the light of applause, but in the silence of solitude. As for guilt, it's perhaps the most seductive prison. We think we're being moral when we punish ourselves, but often we're just avoiding growth. Jung said, mistakes are, after all, the foundations of truth. Don't deny them. Don't romanticize them. Transform them. And finally, meaninglessness, the most silent of all killers, the most invisible wound. It doesn't shout, it whispers, it numbs, it makes everything feel flat. Jung believed that in a world where God has died, we must become the artists of our own meaning. We must craft it, like sculptors, out of the clay of our lives. He didn't mean we should invent delusions. He meant we should discover our symbol. The unconscious speaks in symbols, dreams, myth, instincts, synchronicities, and those symbols, when truly listened to, lead us back to meaning, not from above, but from within. So where do we go once we recognize these traps? Jung gave us a concept, Individuation. It's not a self-help buzzword. It's the lifelong process of becoming whole, not perfect whole. It means reconciling the opposites in you, the light and the dark, the masculine and the feminine, the rational and the irrational, the sinner and the It means no longer dividing yourself into categories of acceptable and unacceptable, lovable and unlovable. It means saying, all of this is me, and I will not exile any part of my being. I will understand it, I will contain it, and I will grow because of it. Individuation is not a destination, it's a path. It's the daily act of showing up for yourself in your full complexity, not who the world wants you to be, but who you are, behind the armor, behind the mask, beneath the noise. So here's the truth. No one escapes the traps entirely. Even the wisest fall into them, Jung included. But the difference is this: the wise don't build houses there. They walk through, they learn, they evolve. This isn't about perfection. This is about presence, self-awareness, courage. You will fall into certainty, into guilt, into the craving for validation. That's human, but you now carry a map. You now have names for these landscapes, and when you can name a place, you can leave it. So don't rush to escape discomfort. Sit with it. Ask what it wants to teach you. That's where real freedom lives, not in running away from the darkness, but in learning to carry light through it. And remember, the soul is not fragile. It is not broken. It is ancient. It is vast. It has survived wars, heartbreaks, betrayals, and even forgetfulness. And still it longs to wake up. Let it. There's one more layer Jung left us to explore. One that often goes overlooked. It's not personal, but collective. He called it the collective unconscious. Most of us believe we are thinking our own thoughts, but Jung suspected otherwise. He believed that buried beneath our personal traumas and memories lies something deeper, an inherited psychic reservoir that connects every human being. The archetypes we dream of, the myths we resonate with, the symbols we return to, they are not accidents. They are echoes of something ancient moving through us. The hero, the mother, the trickster, the wise old man. These are not just characters in stories. They are blueprints of the psyche. They shape the way we experience love, fear, hope, betrayal. And if we do not recognize them, we become possessed by them. Think of it this way: if you do not become conscious of the story you are in, you will play the role unconsciously. And sometimes tragically, a man might become the tyrant because he never faced his wounded inner child. A woman might fall in love with her own shadow, projected onto a partner. A society might scapegoat a group because it cannot face its own guilt. Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. What looks like destiny is often just a pattern, unseen, inherited, repeated. But here's the key: once you see the pattern, you can break it. People often ask, where do I find my shadow? How do I meet the unconscious? Jung's answer is both terrifying and liberating. Through others, we meet ourselves most clearly in our relationships, not in isolation. What irritates you about someone? That's your shadow. What fascinates you about them? That's your unconscious ideal. What keeps repeating in your relationships? That's your inner wound asking to be seen. It's not about blaming others. It's about noticing what parts of yourself they activate. Your partner may trigger your abandonment fear. Your boss may reflect your fear of authority. Your friend may awaken envy. But the emotion is yours. The reaction is yours. The healing is also yours. This is why solitude can be illuminating, but not enough. You must step into the relational world. To truly individuate, you must allow others to reflect your blind spots, your light, your darkness. Relationships are crucibles of transformation, not because they're easy, but because they burn away the illusion of who you think you are. There's one final figure Jung would want us to acknowledge on this journey. Not a concept, not an archetype, but someone very real within you. The inner child. Most adults walk around with the body of a grown-up, and the emotions of a child unattended, unheard, unloved. They react with rage, withdrawal, or panic, not because they are flawed, but because some part of them remains frozen in time. Jung didn't use the term inner child often, but he spoke of the child archetype, a symbol of potential vulnerability and the promise of renewal. To reconnect with this child is not sentimental, It is revolution because the child within you holds your original essence, your playfulness, your awe, your sensitivity, your creativity, your primal wounds and your capacity to heal. This child does not need perfection. They need presence. They need you to stop abandoning them the way others may have, to stop silencing them, to listen, to comfort, to protect. Individuation doesn't mean becoming someone new. It means returning to the person you were before the world taught you to forget. And so now, we return to the center. What have we uncovered? We've seen that the journey to self is not a linear path, but a spiral. We circle around our wounds. We meet them again and again, each time with more awareness, more compassion, more depth. We've seen that the traps of the soul, certainty, guilt, validation, nostalgia, meaninglessness, are not failures. They are invitations, symbols, thresholds. Jung did not promise us salvation. He offered something harder and better. He offered us the truth, that we are not singular, but multiple, that we contain contradictions, that our suffering is not random, that healing is not the removal of pain, but the integration of it. You will fall, you will forget, but each time, if you return, not to the past, not to who you were, but to the present moment, to the soul beneath the roles, you reclaim something eternal. Carl Jung was not trying to make you feel better. He was trying to make you whole. There is a difference. Wholeness doesn't mean constant joy. It means inner peace amidst chaos. It means a self that can hold paradox. It means the courage to look at what others turn away from and not flinch. The soul's journey is not glamorous. It is not easy, but it is sacred. So when you feel lost, you're on the path. When you feel broken, good, you're cracking open. And when you feel alone, remember this, you're never alone in the collective unconscious. We are all walking each other home, one shadow, one insight, one step at a time. Let the journey continue. Where do you go when you sleep? Not your body. You, the you that feels, dreams, flies, falls. Jung believed dreams are not meaningless hallucinations or biological noise. He saw them as letters from the unconscious, encoded in symbols, sent to you each night, like divine whispers. Dreams show us what we avoid, what we repress, what we need to confront, but they don't speak in plain words. They speak in myth. You don't just dream of your ex, you dream of betrayal. You don't just dream of falling, you dream of control lost. A flood might be a symbol of overwhelm. A snake might be danger or transformation. A house with many rooms, that's your psyche showing you the locked doors inside. If you keep having the same dream, it's not a glitch, it's a message you haven't opened yet. Jung kept extensive dream journal, not to interpret them like puzzles, but to allow their symbols to slowly integrate into his waking life. So maybe the next time you wake up shaken or confused by a dream, instead of brushing it off, ask, what is my soul trying to tell me? Jung noticed something else, something strange, even mystical. He called it synchronicity, not causality, not coincidence, but a third kind of connection. You think of someone, and they call you. You dream of water, and wake up to rain. You read a line in a book that answers a question you haven't asked out loud. Jung called these meaningful coincidences, events that seem connected not by logic, but by meaning. It's easy to dismiss them, but Jung warned, in a purely rational world, the soul suffocates. Synchronicity reminds us that reality is not just a machine, it's a mirror, and sometimes when we are deeply attuned, the world responds to us, not because we control it, but because we are part of it. To live in synchronicity is not to believe everything is a sign, but to walk through life awake enough to notice when something resonates in your bones, to say this matters, even if I don't know why yet. Inside every man, Jung believed, lives an anima, the feminine aspect of his psyche, and inside every woman lives an anima, the masculine. These aren't about gender, they're about energy, the polarities of our being. The anima is intuition, feeling, receptivity, nurturance. The animus is logic, structure, assertion, power. When we reject one of these energies, we become lopsided. Men become hyper-rational, cut off from their emotions. Women become over-accommodating, losing their voice, or vice versa. But when we integrate them, we become whole. This is why romantic relationships feel so electric. You're not just falling in love with someone, you're falling in love with your unconscious self, the part you've disowned, the danger, projection. You see your ideal in them, and when they fail to be your mirror, you turn cold or cruel. But when you realize the love you seek is actually a part of your own soul calling to be integrated, you stop chasing completion in others, and you begin the most sacred relationship of all, the union of your own inner masculine and feminine. And then there's death. Jung didn't pretend to know what comes after, but he had visions, dreams, moments of transcendence. He once said, "Our birth is a death, and our death a birth." He believed the ego dies, but the self is eternal, not the personality but the archetypal soul, the part of you that was never just yours.